Tribeca X, award-winning podcast To Catch a Thief, is back with a focus on North Korea. The headline, North Korea is not just hacking companies from outside, it's getting hired from the inside. North Korean IT workers are infiltrating American companies as remote developers and then funneling their salaries back into North Korea's weapons program.
Most of the organizations that I talk to that are Fortune 500 companies say, we've unintentionally hired a North Korean IT worker. It happened, it slipped through the cracks. Because, by the way, people didn't really understand that this was a thing. It was, when I first heard about North Korean IT workers, it sounded far-fetched. It didn't sound like it was something that was really happening. And it took me a few cases before I truly understood how real and how significant and serious this was.
Okay, I want to bring in the host of the To Catch a Thief podcast, Nicole Perlroth, who spent over a decade as the New York Times lead cybersecurity reporter. Nicole, thank you so much for being with us. The podcast is fascinating, and it's amazing how widespread this is. You got inside the North Korean worker Discord cell. How are they able to infiltrate these well-known companies? I mean, don't they do background checks?
So they're using Americans as facilitators. Okay. So they'll find an American, usually online. They'll pose as sort of an internet buddy type thing. They'll find these Americans who are looking for quick cash. They'll ask these Americans to accept a corporate laptop. In some cases more. They've asked them to do drug tests. In some cases, they've stolen their identities, or they've asked to borrow their identities in other cases. And then they'll use this person to essentially receive the laptop, and then they'll log in remotely and do their work from there. In some cases, they're taking as many as 12 jobs. I worked with a security firm that hired one of these North Koreans purposefully and then sent them a laptop with spyware embedded so we could see how they were working. And what was stunning about this was the scale. We saw this one North Korean IT worker cell of about 22 people just in the 3 months we had access to their systems apply for 160,000 jobs. And that was just in the United States, which just gives you a little sense of the scale because this was just one cell. And using the heuristics from this one cell, Discord was able to find much, much larger cells of these North Korean workers.
And to be clear, this isn't just like an HR problem. This is a national security problem. And they've been able to infiltrate places like a nuclear facility. What kind of information were they able to gain access to? This is alarming.
Yeah, that was really the big eye-opener for me. It's a lot of cases they're getting into Fortune 500 companies, and you just heard from Charles, who speaks to the fact that he hasn't met one company who hasn't inadvertently hired a North Korean IT worker. But what was stunning was we saw one worker post their offer letter and then even screenshots from what they had access to at a U.S. nuclear facility. Now, it turned out, thank God, in this case, that the facility had fired the worker for some bizarre behavior. But the fact that a U.S. nuclear facility is hiring a remote worker that turns out to be a North Korean, I think just speaks to, the fact that they are getting jobs inside our most critical infrastructure.
Now, is the concern they're stealing information? Is the concern is that we're paying them and then they're funneling money back into North Korea? Is there a concern that they could launch some sort of cyber attack?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. Okay. For the most part, we've seen them really there for the paycheck.
Okay.
They are there to get the steady income, and we know through some sanctions monitors that income is flowing back to North Korea's munitions department, which procures missiles and everything they need for their nukes program. But as American companies start looking for red flags for these North Korean workers, and there are several, things like keystroke latency, the time between when someone's typing on a keyboard and what gets picked up on a corporate network, red flags like that, they are finding some of these North Koreans much quicker and firing them. But the North Koreans, and we interviewed a defector, said they really have these strict quotas that come down from the regime, and those quotas don't go away. So as the pressure to monetize their access increases, and as the duration that they're at these companies decreases, we are starting to see handoffs between these North Korean IT workers and some of the specialized North Korean hacking cells that we've tracked for years. And that's really where the risk is starting to increase, that this isn't just about the paycheck anymore. This might lead to, extortion, that the source code they have access to, that they built in some cases at these companies, will come back in the form of cyber attacks.
Okay, so what's being done to stop this from happening?
So fortunately, when I first started this podcast over a year ago, I did it because I thought, gosh, this is like a bizarre HR fraud that must be happening to a handful of companies here and there. But then I started hearing about defense contractors hiring these North Korean IT workers and major Fortune 50 companies hiring these North Korean IT workers. So I started following this trail and found out that the scale of this truly is staggering. And it's become amazing. I mean, some companies told me they had to shut down their job portals because they're just getting inundated with fake North Korean illegitimate candidates. Wow. The good news is, as this is happening, more companies' chief information security officers are talking to each other and they are sharing these red flags. They're sharing these personas, and companies are searching for, flagging, and firing these workers earlier than they would have a year or two ago. But we found out that this really exploded during COVID, and we're still seeing it across the board.
Nicole Perlroth, the podcast is called To Catch a Thief. It is fascinating reporting. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you so much for having me.